My name is Ashlyn, and welcome back to Medicated and Motivated. I have not said that in like 3 months, and you know what? I'm not going to apologize. This episode is basically the reason why I was gone for so long, why my content on all of my platforms was so sporadic. We're going to talk about the brutal but unavoidable hell that is the job search. I did not get the opportunity to talk about the job search over on my podcast because the last time that I talked to you guys, it was, I believe, the episode with my capstone student, Will. And I think I might have touched on it a little bit, but I did not go in depth about the job search, why I was even job searching, and how it was going for me over here because I wanted to wait for this episode. I wanted to debrief it all in bulk once my job search was finally over. And hallelujah, thank the amazing Lord up above, the job search is over. There's also a lot of other reasons I was gone for a long time and that my content was so sporadic. Number one, do we see this lovely background? I'm in a new house. I finally moved. I've been talking about moving forever, it feels like. But I am in my new house with my fiance. We finally broke long distance after almost 3 years. And all of my podcasting stuff, all my filming stuff packed away. You know, the things that I lost? My phone stand, my ring light, and the little adapter that I usually use to connect my microphones. So a lot of this has also been delayed because I think it's inevitable that you're going to lose things when you're moving, especially when it's a long distance. I also really wasn't in the mentality to create content. And I talk about this a lot over on Instagram and TikTok if you guys don't follow me over there. My mentality over, I want to say probably May all the way up to July was horrible. My mental health was not well, and I will talk about this more in depth, but a lot of it was because of the job search. I was starting to feel very unworthy, not good enough, and really questioning my place in the EMS field and do I have a place in the EMS field because it's really hard to find a job in this field is what I discovered. So let's dive right into it. I never introduced myself. My name is Ashlyn. I am a full-time paramedic, and this is my podcast, Medicated and Motivated, where I talk about the real and the raw lifestyle of what it is like being an EMS provider. If you've never seen my face or heard my voice before, I am also over on TikTok and Instagram. Both of my handles will be in the description below. Okay, so the reason that I was in the job search no matter what, my fiance and I have been long distance for 3 years. He lives 2 hours away from my current job. He is a police officer. He's also in the military. He started this job back in like 22, 23, 23 when we first met. And I knew eventually I was going to move up here. But I wanted him to establish his career in the police department and the military. I wanted to kind of get my own bearings as well. I had an idea that this job search was going to suck, but I didn't realize how bad it was going to suck. I knew eventually I was going to have to move. I was going to have to quit my full-time job. But I knew I had time. So when he moved up here, I knew that he was going to take time to establish himself at the police department. He was also going to have time to do his military training. He had a lot of military stuff coming up as well. So he was going to be out of town. And he just kind of wanted to build his foundation. We both agreed when we first started dating that we both had foundations to build before we started a foundation together. And that was going to take time. That is where the long distance came in. He moved up here to basically start his life, start his foundation, while I continued to build my foundation at my current job. If nobody knows this, I work in the Southeast Kansas/Missouri area. It is a rural suburban type of service, and I have been there for 3 years. I adore my service. I have been working at my current full-time job for 3 years. I started there in 2022. I had been a medic for a whole year, but this service rebuilt me from the ground up. I had a whole year of bad habits, toxicity, anxiety, fear, and just utter and complete insecurities completely manifested in my brain. And when I started at this service, I had to make a whole clean slate. I had to completely trust these supervisors and paramedics to rebuild me as a paramedic because I had no guidance. Everything that I had learned as a paramedic in the field, I had to build on my own. And it was miserable. I talk about this a lot on Mike Crunchio's podcast, The World's Okayest Medic. It was a upbringing in EMS that nobody should have had to go through, but I'm also proud of myself for going through it because it made me who I am today. However, when I went to my current job, They saw how much work I needed and they were very patient with me. The girl I was when I walked into my service 3 years ago is not the same woman leaving now 3 years later. I am not the same paramedic whatsoever. I am a completely different provider, and it is in the best way possible. This service grew me so much. Whenever my training chief or my chiefs or my captain or my battalion chief, whenever they're asked about me and my performance at my service, that is the number one thing they say. I have shown immense improvement, and I take that and I run with it. It is one of the things that I am the most proud of because I know the girl I was when I started in 22, and I was rough. I was like a cowboy paramedic, but not in the good way. So it was a little scary for a while. I could tell that a lot of people were unsure of me when I started at the service because of how my habits were. So back in January, my fiance actually found this house, and I knew that I was going to have to find a new job soon. My lease at my old apartment actually ended in like May or June. So I had a little bit of time, but I wanted to start the job search early. I am not a stranger to the job search. I'm not a stranger to agencies and schools. I know it takes time. So I wanted to start early. I started applying for places back in February. I did have a few jobs in mind. I applied at specific places for specific reasons. And I just want to say that this job search being extended over like 6 months was actually a blessing in disguise. So I had one specific job in mind, and I actually made a whole TikTok about it. I applied at an education department. Everyone knows that I do have a heavy background in EMS education. I've been an adjunct for 4 years now. I love EMS education. I do foresee a future in EMS education, whether that is teaching at a college, helping at a college, or being some type of field training officer or training chief. That is my goal in EMS. I love to educate and prepare EMS providers. But the job that I was applying for was going to be a huge change. It was going to be full time education. It was going to be a schedule that I have never experienced. I have never done a normal work schedule. I have only ever done an EMS related schedule, whether it was 24/48, 48/96, the California swing. I have only ever known working overnights. So it was going to be a very large adjustment, and I was prepared for that. It was also going to be a very large kind of imposter syndrome type deal. Being an adjunct, I really like it because I have the humility to say, like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Let's learn together. That's kind of all education really is. Your teachers are not the end all be all. They have all of the answers. They're going to have most, but they may not have everything. That's kind of the beauty of medicine is everything is changing. Tomorrow there could be studies that come out and they're absolutely groundbreaking to every single intervention that we do in EMS and medicine. So I think the false narrative that educators kind of fall into is they have to know the answers to everything. And that is where the imposter syndrome really started kicking in for me. I started getting really, really anxious the more I was waiting for answers from this job of like, oh my gosh, am I actually ready to take on an education role? I don't know. When I went to go interview for this job, it was very intimidating. I knew that I was the youngest applicant by years. I knew that I was the least experienced by years. And I knew that I was going to have to not prove myself, that sounds really bad, but basically fight for a spot, show them why I would be a good candidate. And I do think I did achieve that because ultimately I did end up getting offered this job. I did not take it, but I was offered the job. I think that right there should shut my imposter syndrome up right away. I'm 24 years old. I have been in EMS for 5 years. I've been a paramedic for 4, and I've been an EMS adjunct for 3.5 to 4 of those years. I have almost completed a master's degree in healthcare administration. I have a completed bachelor's degree in EMS education. The fact that I was offered this job, I am so unbelievably grateful for. The entire experience in general, I'm so grateful for because it really opened my eyes to kind of what I want for my career and what my goals are now after experiencing all of this. So let me go job by job. This is the college job that I'm talking about. I applied at a college in an EMS education department. I was not going to be teaching. I want to make that very clear. I was not applying to be a teacher. It was to be a part of the department in a full-time spot. I don't want to completely give away what I was doing or what I applied for. I don't want to dox the college. And I don't want to make this sound negative about the college because I am, like I said, very grateful that I even got the opportunity to interview. I really have nothing bad to say. The reason I ultimately did not end up taking this position is because I realized how badly I would miss the truck. I realized my time on an ambulance is far from over. If I would have taken this education position, I would have stepped away from the truck full time and stepped into a classroom instead. I was afraid of putting myself in a box. I have so much more to learn. I just spent 2 hours before recording this podcast studying a topic that I know is becoming very relevant in EMS. I'll tell you what it is because the video is probably going to come out before this episode. I was studying blood products because I know blood products are becoming so apparent in field EMS, but I know literally nothing about it. I know the basic of basics. I know that's a topic that intimidates me. That is probably one of about 100 in EMS and medicine that I want to learn about. I want to deep dive into. It's a topic that makes me uncomfortable that I don't want to be uncomfortable with anymore. It is something that I know I'm going to need to learn. My worry is that if I took this education position, I was putting myself in a box and I would not have the time nor the drive to learn more. Being around students every single day is amazing because it actually keeps you competent in your skills. So, for example, the EMTs, perfecting and making those BLS skills concrete, being around EMT students all the time is phenomenal. It is amazing. It has taught me things about BVMs and NPAs and OPAs, NAMR breathers, and tourniquets, everything under the sun about splints that I would have never known just going through EMT school as a student. Being an adjunct has made me such a better EMS provider, and I want to continue that. But I also love taking what I learn as an adjunct and applying it to being a paramedic. I was afraid that stepping into that role full time, I would never get to apply any of those things. I would not be able to practice what I'm preaching. I'm also 24. Let's look at the really, really big picture here. I'm 24. I am not ready to step off of a truck. I am not ready to stop running calls. Not ready to stop getting up at 4 in the morning and running a lift assist. Like, no. As there are always going to be ugly parts of this job, I'm going to miss the truck. And I was just not ready. I was not ready whatsoever. But I still held on to the opportunity because I applied for so many agencies. Now, I am around the KC area, Kansas City area. Don't live in the heart of Kansas City, but I live in the surrounding areas. So I applied not only in Kansas City, but I applied to every single outlying county, town, whatever you want to call it. I was going as far as like an hour away from my house to work. Like I was getting desperate. I was literally applying at every single service that I Googled and they said they had a listing, even if it was PRN. I was going to become a PRN princess for a while if I truly couldn't find a job. And I will say, I had my eyes opened to sadly how unprofessional the job search can be. The amount of not only agencies, but corporations, so like hospital corporations, paramedic in the ER type positions, how many jobs did not respond? Still to this day, haven't responded. And I applied back in like March and April. So alarming. So alarming. If you're going to post a position, the least you can do is send an email follow up. Hey, looked over your application. We decided to not move forward with you. That's literally all it takes. But no, the amount of corporations and agencies I was ghosted by, alarming. So alarming. The second thing that really opened my eyes is a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're moving up here. You're going to get a job in no time. Blue lies. Because here's the deal. EMS is ever changing. I would rather fight tooth and nail for a spot in an agency, whether it's taking tests, whether it's performing physicals, whether it's going through 2 and 3 interviews, rather than hire at a service that takes me because I have a patch and a pulse. I know it's a very controversial statement, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. There were a few agencies that I know of in this area, and I'm not talking about a specific one or two. There are several in this area that you apply, you get hired. You may come in for an interview, but the likelihood of you getting the job is pretty high. And then after you get hired is when you start all of the tests and stuff. I wasn't really a fan of that setup. I wasn't really a fan of like not having an agency look at my value, look at how valuable I will be to their service. I will tell you, I sat through probably 4 or 5 interviews. 2 of those interviews, one of them I did get, one of them I didn't get. Both of those interviews were the hardest interviews I have ever sat through. And I had to fight tooth and nail to get these jobs. I went through physical examinations. One of them was literally the psychomotor. Actually, if you have not watched this TikTok, I'll put a picture of it right here. I highly recommend you go watch this TikTok. Basically, I applied for, to this day, the biggest agency that I've ever applied to. It was a type of EMS service I have never worked for, but I was excited. I really reached out and tested myself and challenged myself when I applied for this service. When I looked at the interview process and when they called me for an interview, I was ecstatic, but I was terrified. It was going to be the most rigorous interview I have ever been through, and it was. The first part of the interview process was literally a physical psychomotor. Like, think of rest in peace, the paramedic psychomotor, how you had to go through multiple stations. That is literally how this interview was. You had to pass that in the same day to get your panel interview, which is your stereotypical sit in front of like 4 or 5 people and they ask you questions. I knew that that was going to be terrifying. I was studying for this psychomotor panel slash interview. I was calling so many supervisors and calling coworkers like, hey, you ever experienced this? You work for this type of service. What advice do you have for me? I was terrified. But when I tell you, number one, they were some of the nicest people I have ever met. Number two, I understand why this agency is so big and so well respected. Ignore the balloons. I still don't know how to make those go away. I understand why this agency is so well respected. Number three, I walked away from that interview feeling so proud of myself because of what this interview process showed me though is that this agency wanted high quality providers. They were being picky choosy, but they deserve to be picky choosy. It's a very well respected agency. It's a huge agency. They have top notch patient care and community outreach. They deserve to be very picky choosy, I promise you. And when I wasn't chosen for the job, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't surprised, but it did sting because these people were so kind. I thought the interview went so well. I do look back at it and I would change a couple things that I did, but who doesn't look back at something and wants to change something? But that interview showed me like these are the types of agencies I want to apply for. These people value the people they're hiring and they want people that will mesh well with their agency and they want people that will represent them well. So now we are to the job that I actually got. So this is actually a really unexpected job. I actually applied for this agency back in May and they were super kind. They were super nice. They said, we love your application. We are fully staffed. We literally just don't have room for you. But we will keep your application because EMS is ever changing. And I said, you know what? I get it. I completely understand that. And you know what? They held up to their promise. I actually know 2 people that work at this service. And the day that the service reached out to me and asked me for an interview and asked if I was still interested in a full-time position, I immediately texted both of them and they were over the moon for me. I was so freaking excited, but I was nervous. It is so hard being the new person. I have left agencies and been the new person several times. It is so hard being the unfamiliar face. It is so hard going through orientation. Everything you do is under a microscope. People are making first impressions of you, and sometimes one little thing you do makes a bad impression. And it may not necessarily be your fault. It's just how that person perceived you, but it will follow you. And the thing about EMS agencies and fire and police is y'all have to build trust as people and providers. You guys are now part of a team and you have to learn to work around people's little quirks and their personalities. Sometimes personalities just don't mesh. And that is why sometimes being the nerd person is so hard. You're learning people's personalities, but they're learning your personality. When I walked in for this interview, it was probably one of the most comforting interviews ever. I walked in very stiff and scared, but I walked out feeling so relaxed and feeling like I might fit in at this place really well. I didn't want to get my hopes up because obviously I kind of learned in this interview process and job interview process that getting your hopes up is you are in for such a world of hurt if your hopes get crushed. But I got called back for a second interview, literally the same day as my first. Came back for a second interview. My second interview was basically any questions that were not answered in the first one. And I also had to take a protocol test, very basic test. It was a very, very generic, like paramedic test. And they also they called it a navigation test. It was not a map test, but it was a test where I was given a map and I was given a location on the map. And I had to basically map out like what routes would I take. I think it was more of like, do you know how to navigate? Because if there's anything anyone knows, if you're from Kansas, if you're from Missouri, you know, the counties here are so broad. So broad. Like, I have worked for technically 3 rural services now. And oh my goodness, learning those counties is more of a nightmare than like the grossest airway you can possibly think of. Like, if you're thinking of an angioedema, blood everywhere, you're thinking about having to crike this patient, their vital signs are crap, you're struggling to get access. Oh, and your helicopter said that there's a cloud in the sky, so they're not flying. So you're going to have to drive 45 minutes to the nearest hospital, and it's snowing. So actually, your transport time just went up to 2 hours. Learning a Kansas and Missouri county is way harder than that, I promise you. But anyway, I took the second interview test. I was, again, so nervous, but I felt confident. I will say, this is one of the first interviews that I walked in and I was like, I've got this. I trusted myself. That is something throughout this entire job search process I have not felt very confident in myself. So this kind of brings me to the biggest learning curve and the biggest point that I made myself learn and accept throughout this whole 6-month process. A job search or finding a job does not define you. And just because you're not getting jobs does not mean you are unworthy. When I was going through this process, I would say probably June is when it really hit me. I felt so out of control. I felt so unworthy, and I felt so just like I was the worst paramedic. I took everything so personal. Like, I'm not getting a job because I'm a terrible paramedic. I'm a terrible provider. They are not calling me back because they don't like me as a person. They saw something like a red flag on my resume and they're scared to have me because I'll tarnish them. Like, I was going through so much self-abuse. My mental health was horrible in June. I remember crying more times in June when I was talking to my therapist than the 10, 12 months that we've been working together. It was painful. I can't even express the feeling of just not having any worth in you anymore. But on the flip side of that, my job, like the current one, the one that I was technically trying to leave, they showed me so much value. When I told them, I've been giving them consistent updates. My job has known I'm going to leave them for a while. And they know and understand I was not leaving them on bad terms. I'm leaving them because I'm literally getting married. Like, I don't have a choice. And if anyone knows this, the 24-48 schedule is hard in general. But when you are living a significant distance away, it is a very hard schedule. I would be driving 2 hours to and from a 24-hour shift. And that is just dangerous. That is the whole reason I was moving in the first place. Throughout the job search process, Throughout the job search process, I kept updating all of my chiefs and captain. They would ask me every single shift, how are you doing? How was the interview? How was the job? I would get good luck texts every single day from my shifts when they knew I had an interview. I felt so valued and supported at my job. So in the midst of feeling so unworthy and like it was my fault I wasn't getting a job. I was also shown how valuable I was to my service because their gratitude for me and their support for me showed me that I am not just valuable to them as a provider, I'm valuable to them as a person. And I feel like that is the best feeling someone can have at their service. All right, to wrap it all up, I did end up getting the job. At the time of this podcast, at the time of recording this podcast, I start my new job in a little over a week. I will obviously be going through orientation for a while, but that means the days at my current job are dwindling down. I made an entire TikTok about this and it ended up being like a really, really long TikTok that I'm really shocked a lot of people watched, but I'm so glad a lot of people watched because I talked about grieving. I knew that I would grieve this job. Like I said, this is the first job that I'm leaving on good terms. I am leaving with no bad blood. I know that my last day will be probably one of the hardest days that I ever walk out of work. I will probably bawl the whole way home. Even just thinking about it, like I'm getting a little teary-eyed because I have valued so much at this job. I have had so many memories at this job. I have built bonds at this job that I will never be able to replace. I will make new ones. I'll make more friends. I'll make more coworkers that are going to be like family. But this is the first job that gave me a coworker family. Before this job, I had never felt close to my coworkers. I never felt like I could trust them. I never had coworkers that texted me off duty and just like checked in on me, you know? I had one or two here and there, but as far as like a shift, I had never felt this type of family. And I know that obviously I'll stay connected with them, but it is not the same. It's not the same as being there on duty and just working these horrendous calls with everybody. It's not the same. It's not the same as working calls, making dinner every single night and breakfast every single morning. It's not the same as washing your trucks or stocking them or sitting outside at picnic tables and just debriefing everything. It's not the same. And I know that I've already started the morning process, but I know the day it hits me, I'm going to be really sad. It's going to suck. It really is. But on the flip side to that, I know the joy and excitement of starting my new job is going to be great. I truly feel like this is a service that will do me very well. They have already shown me immense gratitude and they have shown me a lot of support. It's going to suck at first being the new person, but I know that I will not be the new person forever. It's going to take time to get used to everything. It's going to take time to meet everybody and it's going to take time for them to meet me. But overall, I have a lot of new joy. One of the things that my therapist pointed out to me, and one of the reasons I was so low in June, was when I started this job search back in February, I was excited. I was so excited to start this new chapter in my life. I'm moving in with my fiance. I'm moving into a house for the first time. This is the house we're going to start our marriage in. I don't have to be 2 hours away from my fiance anymore. I was also going to be starting a new chapter in my career. I was so excited. But as the job search got harder and harder and harder, rejections kept coming left and right. I was literally getting gaslit at some job offers and job interviews, and it just felt like that unworthiness was consuming me. My therapist noticed that every single time I talked about moving and every single time I talked about the job search, the joy that I used to feel was completely gone. And it was more of dread. And that was a really hard thing to come to terms with. That was one of the therapy sessions that I broke in because I remember I was so excited back in February. But then it's a really powerful thing what feeling unworthy will do to you. And actually questioning yourself as a provider. Everyone knows this. One of the ways to describe me is passionate. I'm not going to cry. No, we're not crying. But one of the ways people describe me is passionate. The passion I have for this job is truly something that I think is unmatched for anything else. And I started to kind of lose a little bit of that passion because I wasn't feeling worthy as a paramedic. I was not feeling like I was worthy of any job. If I'm getting declined and rejected so many jobs, even the itty bitty ones, like ER tech jobs, I was getting denied. What does that say about me as a provider? That's where my head was going. So yeah, I started to feel a lot of resentment against moving and a lot of dread moving because I felt like maybe it wasn't worth it anymore. When things started to finally turn around, I remember it was around the first week of 4th of July. I got a call about the job and started that interview process. And slowly but surely, the joy started coming back. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to represent a new uniform, step into a new truck, all new equipment, all new people. It's going to be such a fresh start. I've already had so much growth in 2025 that this is going to be so enlightening. But it's also okay to be sad that I'm leaving a job that grew me. Okay, no, we're not crying. It's okay to be sad about the job that literally grew me as a paramedic and a woman. I love my service so much. And everything they taught me, I will carry with me for the rest of my career. But I guess that stupid cliche phrase, all things come to an end, even the good things, is true. I always knew that I was going to have to leave this service, but never really imagined the day it was going to come. And it is going to be the most bittersweet feeling ever. Oh my gosh, big bad paramedics, don't cry, even though they should, because bottling up your emotions is really, really bad. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Anyway, I am excited to start my new job. I am so excited to finally be done with packing and moving and the orientation process because I will get to return to this. I actually did not accept one job. I accepted 2 jobs. I have not talked about the second one yet because the people have not announced it yet, and I'm waiting for them to announce it on their timeline. But I will tell you, this would not all be possible without my passion for EMS. I am now doing adjuncting. I am a paramedic, and I am doing other EMS things, all because I never let anyone completely stomp out my fire for EMS. She may have been really small at times. People may have spritzed a little water on her, but no matter what, if it's a little fire pit or if it's a big bonfire, that fire never left. I kept pushing. I have always kept my drive, and it's gotten me to these jobs that are absolutely amazing. Anyways, that's probably all that I have. Anyways, I think that's it. I want to thank you all for being so passionate. Anyways, I think that's it. I want to thank you guys for being so patient. I know that, especially this podcast, it's literally normal for it to be sporadic. It's not going to be consistent. I post whenever I want, I post whatever I want. But being able to finally sit down, reflect, and see how much I've grown in this job process has been very motivating in itself. And I'm so glad that it's over. Oh my gosh. I can't express how happy I am that it's finally over and that it feels like I have control again. Not having control over my future job was a very scary feeling. And to anyone out there in the job search, because the one thing I did learn is that I was not the only one going through this. It will come to an end. I know that my job search around 6 to 7 months was probably seen as really short compared to a lot of other people out there. But I do want to say that it will come to an end. It may not be the job that you expect either. I started this job search thinking I was going into full-time education, but I'm ending the job search on a truck where I belong. But at the beginning, I didn't think I belonged on a truck anymore. It's going to be the job that you maybe least expect, and that is what all of you kept iterating to me, and I wish I would have listened a lot sooner because it probably would have saved my mental health just a little bit. But to anyone out there, it's going to end, and you're going to have the perfect job. and I'm very excited to start mine. To wrap things up, if you don't follow me on my other social medias, I am on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This podcast streams on Spotify and YouTube. I post the video version over on YouTube. I post the audio on Spotify. I know a lot of people are asking about Amazon and Apple Music. Guys, I have tried. I have tried so hard. I do want to get away from Spotify. I'm trying. I really am. And the day I figure it out, you guys will know. But for right now, I am on YouTube, and YouTube is honestly my favorite because I'm a video person. I like seeing people. I like feeling like I'm on FaceTime with people, and that's exactly what I want this to kind of feel like for you guys. Follow me over on TikTok, follow me over on Instagram. I will say Instagram is where I am the most active, whether it's just daily life updates or if it's just little quick little banter things. But that is all for today. Thank you for listening. Please like, please subscribe, please follow wherever you decide to go, and have a good shift.